When making a character, you need to keep two things in mind. One, they must be interesting, and two, they must be either relatable or likable. This goes for already existing characters in your fanfiction as well. For the first example, we're going to use a character that is already interesting and likable and relatable to most people. Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony. If you wanted a fanfiction about this character, you would first need a decent understanding of how this character acts and would react in any situation you would put her in. This keeps her consistent with the television show. To do this, you need to make a character sketch. This means listing both physical and emotional traits, and usually keeping a timeline. First, we'll start with the timeline. This can be as detailed or as simple as you require for your story. For this example, we'll keep it simple. Twilight Sparkle was a student of Princess Celestia. She moved to Ponyville, where she met her friends, and later became the Princess of Friendship. By having this timeline, you can keep a consistency of what Twilight knows and what she would do. If you would like to add your own twists to her backstory or her character, you would still need to do the same thing. Let's say that in your story, you want her to not have met her friends. If you change this detail, you need to rewrite everything afterwards as well, as she would not have become the Princess of Friendship if she had not met any of her friends. You also need to keep a log of what Twilight looks like and how she acts. For her looks, you can write down notes or take a look at her whenever you get questions. Remember her eye color, the color of her hair, the symbol of her cutie mark, the sound of her voice, and all those types of things. And remember to keep them consistent. If she gets a haircut in your story, remember not to describe her having long hair with bangs unless she grows it back. For her traits, you need to remember to include her strengths, weaknesses, and goals. For strengths and weaknesses, watch the character and take note of how they act in certain situations. For Twilight, she is strong-willed, smart, and organized. Her weaknesses is that she is closed-minded and a bit slow to react. You should keep a detailed list of these things in mind or written down for all of your active characters to keep them honest and consistent. For example, you wouldn't have Twilight Sparkle run away from a fight if you were trying to follow the way that the show portrays her. It also helps to keep a list of things that they care about for the next step, their goals. For goals, this depends on what you are writing. Goals are your story prompts and what keeps your characters moving, so they should reflect what your character wants and cares about. If your story is about Twilight going on an adventure, her goal is getting to the destination. If your story is about her inventing something, her goal is to finish. Make sure these goals line up with your characters' strengths and weaknesses and things they care about. Now that we've been over using an already interesting character, let's go over a character where you would need to fill in the blanks a bit. Let's start with one of the co-stars of Zig and Sharko, Sharko. This show is very simple to a Tom and Jerry type story, so Sharko is not given much character. If you were to write a fanfiction about a character like this, using only what the canon story gives you, you would not have much to work with. This is usually the case with a lot of background characters and stories as well. The first step, again, would be to create a timeline. For Sharko, the few bits of backstory the cartoon gives us is usually played for comedy instead of character building, so they aren't very useful. This means you're going to have to get creative. It usually helps to skip this step for now and work backwards, figuring out the character traits you'd like your version to have, and then figuring out the events that shape them. For how the character looks and acts, be sure to follow the source material. If you're going off of a written source, it's usually more helpful to write a list from the book or story so that you don't forget anything or get anything wrong. For this cartoon, we'll just look at a picture. For traits, you'll need to be creative and come up with at least 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. Sharko is devoted, romantic, quick to act, and excitable, according to the cartoon. He is also very relaxed and less threatened. These can all be useful for controlling conflict in your story. Be sure to pay most attention to the traits that create the most conflict, as conflict drives story. He also cares about Marina and everyone else on the beach except Zig. For goals, you would once again need to figure out a medium between your story idea and what your character cares about. An example of Sharko's goal would be get the girl. Now that we've figured out how the character needs to act, we can sketch out a timeline. Unlike real life, fantasy characters are expected to have a backstory to explain why they act the way they do. You can be creative and make this backstory however you like. Maybe Sharko's mother died and that's why he's so protective of Marina, or maybe he knew another mermaid who was kidnapped, or maybe he just likes girls that much. Just make sure that you have an explanation for each trait and goal your character shows in your story, whether or not it is brought up. Thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. I appreciate your attention and your support and wish you and your fanfiction fantastic luck and joy. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to go over anything else, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!